I'm going to say a short introduction and a few words, and then Rafael Ortega is going to read something that has been prepared. There will be some images running in the background without sound, which I'm sure you'll also talk more about. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the entire team of Loop for the invitation. Also, it's my third time here, my consecutive time after last year, and we had I think, agreed last night in a conversation that we're a big group of nerds that comes together at Loop that's very excited about film and video. And so it always feels really nice to be back. And I think there were a few new faces this year that will also be coming back. So that's good news. So thank you, Gabriela and Emilio and Carlos and everybody else for making this happen. I think picking off from the last conversation, I can say that we've also used AI to create the most spectacular presentation. No. We've been kind of put into a situation of a blind date. I've been making a joke of that. So unlike Carly and Lawrence, who have known each other for a long time, we're going to be speaking more in depth together for the first time today, and I'm really excited about that. Lisa Long, mucho gusto. It's going to facilitate, of course, a different type of conversation. And yeah, we wanted to come at it from different sides, which is why we also didn't want to talk too much about our different experiences. You're a cinematographer and a filmmaker and a artist, collaborator, have a hybrid kind of practice. That's something we'll definitely be talking about. And I'm a curator and also the artistic director of a video or a time-based art collection. So yeah, a few things that we're going to be talking on, as Gabriela already said, was this idea of what is behind the scenes, who are and something that Carly and Lawrence also touched on at the end about this idea of labor, who is producing the image that we then get to see, and what are the roles, maybe what are the hierarchies, to kind of conjure an inner Oprah moment where what's the drama, what's the love, all of the trust that's involved, the ego that is involved with all these processes when humans come together to create something and have each their own vision that then gets tunneled into a particular kind of vision. So before we go into that, I'm going to hand off to you because you had something to say at the beginning. And yes, thank you for being in.
Well, thank you very much. Being a nerd of moving image, being a nerd of, I've been doing artist collaborations for 29 years. I have no idea why I never came before. And so I'm really happy to be here. I think I have been somehow in a lot of works that I have done in collaboration with other artists. And yes, I had my first experience with AI yesterday because I write in Spanish and we were agreed that we had to do it in English. So ChatGPT, who I had no idea what it was and I had never used, did this translation. Let me see. Oops. Around. Oh, sure. I'm very slow. Cancel. What does it imply? What does it involve? How does a piece become possible? Somehow it is all connected to collaborate. One day, someone, a Tuesday for example, while awakening from sleep, opened his eyes in amazement in a fleeting, precise, clear, and almost imperceptible moment, and half perceives an idea appearing. Out of control, there's someone lying next to some crooked blinds, fumbles between brain, heart, skin, memory, sleep, desperately tries to ensure that the traces that almost give it do not move too far away. It tries to grasp them, bring them together, contain them. In a chaotic dance, the vile and elusive dots, continue to move. They come together, they move away, they rotate, they join together, they fade away, they collide, they merge. They accommodate, and without warning, they almost give shape to something that can become something. Most of them fade. Every once in a while, there is a remnant, fragile thread that if you pull very carefully, perhaps you can get hold of an idea. Sometimes it is achieved. Most of the time, the thread breaks. Sometimes you get lucky. A telephone ringing. This is by the time when telephones had a ring. A phone call, a letter, a young man from Michoacan, his uncle who makes jarapes, a Belgian with some sheep in the central square of Mexico, a contemporary composer fresh from New York with a margarita cocktail in a hand, an artist recently arrived from Boston carving soap idols in the streets of Licenciado Verdad, an almost forgotten cinematographer, photographer, and camera mechanic in the Barrio de Niño Jesús in Mexico, a young woman leaning on the railing of a ship crossing the ocean from France. A tireless cartoonist who drinks heavily, loves 1,000 people, and spends nights in search for a good party. A foul-mouthed and generous Cuchiteca woman, sound engineer. A Huachinanteco scriptwriter with HIV who dances like a rumbera. A cameraman from Ecatepec, war correspondent, and the mystery of a spider. A room in a museum of modern art and a circular spit of toothpaste, almost perfect on Fabriano paper, almost imperceptible, with a lateral and grazing light, turned magically into a moon. A gun, one mountain, 500 volunteers, 25 buses, 500 shovels, 4 cameras, 2,000 hot dogs and some water, and I forget, 10 latrines, 6 hours. One stadium, 2,000 adolescents, 12 cameras, 2 mobile units, 3 engineers, 6,000 bottles of water, 4,000 lunches, 4 hours, 1 extra day, 1 guitar player, his electric guitar, 1 Marshall amplifier, a multi-track recorder, microphones, 5 microphones and 120 meters of XLR cables. 320 megaponera ants in Nigeria. A baboon family and 9 pieces of colored plexiglass. 1 table, 1 camera, 20 cutout panels, 2 lights, 3 days. 40 butterflies. And let's build a home split photography system, just exactly like the one used by Kubrick in 2001 Space Odyssey for tomorrow. Futuristic Order, or Futuristic Ode. 8 Super 8, 514, 814, 1014, Bolex, CP, Mitchell, Panavision, Beaulieu, Atom. Kinari, Ariflex, Aritechno, Aricam, Alexa, 35, 35.2, 16, 16ST, 16M, 35.2C, 16SR, 35, BL, BL2, BL3, BL3C, 16SR2, BL4, BL4S, 16SR34, 435. 8, Super 8, 16, Super 16, 35, Super 35, 70mm. Video 8, High 8, DV, Mini DV, UHD, HD, Full HD, 4K. ES980, XL1, XL1S, XL2, XLH. Ikegami, Panasonic, Canon, Sony, Toshiba, Nikon, Blackmagic, Red Dragon. 166, 185, 44, 43, 640 by 480, 220 by 480, 220 by 486, 16 by 9, 9 by 16, 16 by 10, 1920 by 180, 4K, 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 6K, 8K, 2K, 4K, 6 bits, 8 bits, 10 bits. RAW files, ultra high definition, 0 detail. One never doubts. Do you want a coffee? This yes, this no, this maybe, this no, this yes, this is shit, it doesn't work. What if, maybe, I think, you think so? It's horrible, here we go, I don't like it, maybe we could. If I understand correctly, and why not? Do we put 2 or 3? What if we covered all the walls of the room with silver paper? Longer, shorter, take it out, maybe yes, but shorter, wow. Are we looking for other shots? Path, step, crossing, trip, transit, mark, footprint, trace? Remove it, put it up, lower, further to the left, further to the right. Yes, no, up, down, a little bigger, darker, lighter. It is very green. I hate magenta. Further to the right, put it before it. It is out of focus. Better later, better as it was. Longer, shorter, not this. This, yes. See you tomorrow. X and Y, X and Y. Together, all of us, we try to imagine a place that can contain, embrace, include all these hundreds of places, stories, loves, pains, colors, dreams, regrets, desires, and possible futures. And that this place has at least some cracks for making it possible for someone else to enter. Sometimes it is achieved, sometimes it is not, but it never, ever stops being a privilege to be a part of the attempt. I am often asked why I like to collaborate, and to be honest, I really don't know where to start. At the end of the day, one knows that somehow, not too far from home, one is a little crazy.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I don't know where to start. That was a big wave of all the types of collaborations and communication that happens, all the technologies, the materials, the companies, the bottles of water and plexiglass sheets and bit rates that go into what we do. Thank you for doing that. I think it is kind of brings immediately to the fore how much knowledge there is, how specific it is as well, how it changes over time, and how we need to adapt to the new things, also these idea of cracks. And maybe I wanted to start there because I was going to start with a very simple question, what collaboration means for you, but I'm going to maybe nuance that a little bit more, because of, I guess, an art world and a film world that sometimes overlap, but not always. Where were the cracks for you to enter the collaboration with artists for more artist film or video or a contemporary art field? When did that happen, and how were you invited in? How did those encounters begin?
So I'm a dropout from 2 film schools. So I left my parents. I was very young, and I was working since I was 19 years old. And I kind of like started really fast career in moving in film, because for one very particular reason, is because I read the manuals, so I know how to use equipment. So I became from pulling cables to third assistant, second assistant, first assistant, camera operator, focus puller, to DOP, director of photography. This is a really fast kind of like 4 or 5 years, which is not very normal for somebody my age. I was 23, 24. And one day, so I started kind of like had some friends who were strange, and one of them invited me to this place in the center, and he said, "We have to go. There's some art exhibition in an apartment." And then I said, "But I don't want to go and see an art exhibition in an apartment. I don't know anything about contemporary art." And he said, "Yeah, but the drinks are free." So I said, "Fine, let's go." So we went there, and I talked to a lot of people. And the next day, I received a phone call, and this phone call is from somebody who says, "So somebody gave me your number, and I want to ask you if you could help me make a video." Um, and I said, "Well, what's it about?" And he said, "Well, first we have to go to Michoacan to record my uncle who makes jarapes. But before that, I have it's an action, and you have to record it." And I said, "Okay. So you have to tell me what it is so that I can do it." So basically, there's a grand piano, and I'm going to be dressed as a boxer. I'm going to put the helmet of the boxer, and in the 2 pieces that go on protecting, that part of the face, I'm going to put 2 micro gloves, and I'm going to then open the grand piano, and I'm going to hit it with my head, and then I'm going to hit it against the wall, and then I'm going to hit the piano again, and then I'm going to hit the wall until I can't do it anymore. And I thought, I want to do this. I have no idea what is this, how it feels, what it happens, And so one of the very early feelings of working in collaboration has always been the idea of sharing, And I think that I can't imagine that she felt quite vulnerable in sharing this idea with me, not knowing if I was going to say, you're completely off your head, go find somebody else, or I didn't ask for an explanation, and I still don't, So that's a little bit the way it happens.
So let's take that as an example to maybe get into what it actually meant then in the space, or in that moment of negotiation between the action, you as a bystander with the camera, and then thinking about, I guess, I'm assuming that, the artist will sort of have display in mind as well, and communicating that with you. How does that conversation happen for you?
It basically, it's most of the time it starts with a phrase. If somebody describes an action, something to me, and I can't see a film in my mind, most likely I don't do the projects, because rule number 1 in my collaborations is when we start a collaboration, there are 2 possibilities: that I'm the right person or that I'm not the right person. So before we start the shooting, I can always say I don't want to do this project, and you can always say I don't want you to do the project, which I think it's a good period of openness, no? But it basically, for me, it works like that. I mean, if and then what the interesting, beautiful process about collaboration, which for me, collaboration means sharing, is that when he says that phrase, I watch a movie, but that movie is not the same movie that he's thinking. And that is when it's really interesting. So you start kind of put it together and try to make the same movie, or something that not even each of us imagines. No.
So I guess one of the longest collaborations that you've had in your life is with Francis Alice.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, getting to know someone, as you say, this moment of going into a project, you have a different idea, he has a different idea, or the other artist who is there, and then sharing and negotiating and trusting each other and kind of that back and forth. I am very curious to kind of hear how that changes over time as well with technologies, and maybe using your relationship with Francis. The latest project was the one in Venice, if I understand correctly. We also saw in this short clip the gun performance, restaging, reenactment. So also these very extreme situations together. There were a few others as well. So really going to these different parts, and I'm still trying to get to that one moment of negotiation, or this like switch between the artist vision and the artistic, or the idea that the artist has, and your vision as a cinematographer, and their kind of feedback, and maybe also bringing like their incorporation of that into their practice, because then not always, but sometimes, what later emerges is attributed more to the artist, at least publicly, than it is.
I mean, there's when things are done in film, in analog film, it's a completely different thing. It's a different ball game. The decisions are based on money, because film is really expensive. But after we started producing videos in electronic or digital formats, the great solution was, okay, so we get to a point of confrontation, and why don't we make both? Let's just make both shots and see which one works better. Sometimes works better, something works better, something doesn't, and that's what the point of negotiating is. And also, it's a learning process. I mean, after doing this first projects, I remember an artist came and he said, I want to do this project and I want to do this thing, and I want to have it in 2 monitors. And I said, no, moving image is 1 channel and that's it. And the guy said, no, I think, and I said, we started a really heavy discussion, and I said, you're a coward, because you're because you don't know anything about film. I was being arrogant, deeply arrogant, and you don't know how to put everything in 1 channel. You're going to put it in 2. And that's really basically the reason why. And we were arguing. The guy said, let's just try it. And we tried it. And then I said, oh, fuck, he's right. It's great. It's incredible. We could have never done what this produces, 2 monitors with 1 channel. And I think it's the acceptance that you might have a craft, but you don't know everything. No, you really have to go into this process of learning. And that is a process of negotiation. No, not being stubborn enough in saying, okay, this is what I know, and this is the way I know, and this is the only way. And that's something I also have learned from art practice. That's what happens.
Because in film, it's a little bit more premeditated and hierarchical from the structure.
Sir, yes, sir. It's basically a military, and you don't ask. So the director, there's all these filters, so that the director gets a question. So I remember there was this. I mean, they were doing a scene with there were like, I don't know, we had like a regiment in the middle of the desert, and they were all dressed as pre-Columbian original Mexicans, and there was this guy in the shot that he was wearing shorts, military shorts, and I was going to tell the director, like, there's a guy there who has green shorts. And then it's 20th century shorts. This is a 16th century film, and it took 5 minutes. So I had to tell somebody, so that the guy from dressing, and then he went to the second assistant. The second assistant went to the first assistant, but the first assistant was somewhere else, and then he couldn't round, and they couldn't find the director, and suddenly it took 5 minutes just to say, this guy has. Oh, by the way, there's this guy in green. Take him out of the frame. So I think one of the other reasons is that and which I really like about the art projects, is that once you start the machinery of filmmaking, you can be making an absolute piece of shit, but you can't say anything because the machinery is on its way. And that's, is something completely different, in the arts. You can really turn around and say, this is not working. I mean, you've hit yourself to the wall 15 times and it's just nothing happens in the image, or you've been hanging yourself on that rope for 25 minutes and it's not happening, the performance is not happening, and you can kind of process things in a different way, no? Or move a mountain and 2 days before realize that the dynamics we had planned were not going to happen.
Images aren't running, by the way.
Sorry. I don't know.
It's the wrong images. It's the programmed ones. So art is a little bit more of an escape for you in your creative practice.
You see, I think one of the interesting things about art making in the 21st century is that we have realized that it's not a single person endeavor. And I remember when very early in the 90s, they started with this, the multimedia, the multimedia, and everybody started talking about the multimedia. And I thought, multimedia is human relations. So because, of course, if you wanted to do anything in a computer or you wanted to do anything, you had to get in touch with somebody else. And it's really particularly interesting for me in the way it's working, for example, in its closeness with performance now. I mean, performance is becoming a little bit more of a part of the language of contemporary art. And of course, the performers are part of the art piece. They are the art piece in a way. If they're not there, it doesn't happen.
I mean, that's a conversation that's still very much unfolding in the artistic sphere. I feel that, especially when it comes to performance, performers, they're credited at best, but they're not considered, co-authors often. And of course, there's different types of performance and different approaches, from scripted moments to improvisation, etc. But I do think, especially with the kind of larger commitment also to collective forms of art making and art practice, it's something that needs to be talked about, and it needs to be talked about in advance. So maybe there's something to learn from the film world, even though we don't want necessarily, a machine that we can't stop in art production. I guess that depends on the budget price. Yeah. But trying to figure out ways of making sure that the expertise and the knowledge and the labor that people are sharing gets accredited or gets acknowledged, and also brought to the fore. And I think it's particularly prevalent in Loop, at Loop, as in a video art fair, where almost every piece has more than one person behind the scenes making it. And some of the best, for example, I'm, speaking from my own biased position now, but Young Jun Tak's video Upstairs is on view at the Julia Stoschek Foundation in Berlin, and that's Young Jun Tak's first film ever, and didn't consider himself a filmmaker before, and during COVID came to filmmaking because he couldn't get to the studio, but then was talking to a friend and was talking about he had no idea how to produce a film or even like what he needed to think about, and then the friend was like, but that's what I do. Yep. And so they started working together, and then they then the friend also had someone who came in and brought a sound artist, and then Young Jun Tak knew about certain performers that he wanted to work with, certain choreographers. So it's really this, it kind of grew out of this also not knowing in a way, and then asking someone with expertise, like you were also asked for when you were first brought into the art world. And I think that's, I would really appreciate, or I'd love to see that be more of a conversation that is happening in the open. I think it's also very much related to maybe how people are compensated also for their labor, because it's something that is in the film world is very unionized to certain extents in different parts of the world, and different kind of structures and put in place, and that also doesn't exist yet in the art world. So in the way the art world has a lot of openings and freedoms to find these flexible, generative, beautiful, fun, dramatic, tense situations of working together, but there also is a lot of kind of insecurity in that and precarity that could be addressed a little bit more. So I wanted to, do you have any ideas of maybe or I wanted to hear or a little bit more about how, like, if there's something from the film world that you think artists or the art world could kind of look towards or adopt a little bit in their structures.
It's not about necessarily the film world. It's about the acceptance that working in a team always produces, most of the time, not always, produces a stronger project. And I think it's. I mean, this idea of also, people who. I mean, there's the basulkas here. The piece that I I was gloriously sitting down yesterday to seeing it, like 7 minutes of this crazy guys just doing dots, and I like who. There are two names there, like who did what. Who cares? I mean, it's it's the piece is there, it works, and the title is there, and then both artists are there, included. Those limits are interesting. I like that. I think it also has to do more with parenting. Like, don't blame the mother, don't blame the father, blame them both. It's both. And I think that okay, that, and the other thing about what is interesting for me is the way in which, I mean, everybody in the art world that I know, historians, curators, gallerists, collectors, they love the process. Well, I do too. And this is also why I do it. And I think a lot of the people who collaborate in artistic projects, they do it because they love it, they like it, And so there is a very kind of like schizoid thing of, we love to see the process, but we don't want to talk about it openly, And it's just needed. And it really doesn't take much. You get a piece of paper, you print the names of the people, whoever is interested in reading the credit. It's like the credits in films. I mean, who here stays and sees the credits in the cinema? I mean, it's just sometimes, yeah. If you're interested, or you want to know something, you want to know, all the information is there. It's an interesting thing about credits. I love them because, it reminds me, it's people working, doing things, and first time I worked in a film, and we had this big premiere. I was 20 years old, 19 to 20 years old, and of course I invited my mother. I said, I'm going to invite my mother to the premiere. Who am I going to invite? So I invited my mother to say, look, I'm already working in film. The credits appear, and I'm like at the end of the credits, of course, And my mother gets up and shouts, "That's my son!" and I really felt like, yeah, everybody here is the son of somebody, or the brother, or the mother, or the parent, or the partner, or the lover, whatever. All these people have a story, and all these people are making this, and I felt a lot of respect for that. I understood that there was a lot of respect in the cinema world, and actually, the revenge of the director is taking you out of the credits. That's the revenge, or the producer.
And that can happen
all the time. All the time. They're evil. The meetings when they check the lists, they're evil. I love them. They're really interesting. Sometimes, and some people also deserve the credit. Some people don't. It's also true. In a collective process, that is a moment where it's discussed. So he has this credit, but did he do the job? If everybody agrees that he didn't do the job, he's out of the list. He's out of the list.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, but it's, I guess, something to take away. Many artists who work with video and film and moving images and digital arts of different kinds do use credits. Many choose not to because of the loop.
Yeah.
In the form of presentation. So maybe we talk a little bit about that, because how involved are you in the idea of conceptualizing a space? Of, for example, when it's multi-channel and
I mean, every time I start a collaboration, I've been setting up shows everywhere because, of course, at the beginning when I started doing video, the museums didn't have a VHS and a monitor, so you had to kind of get it from somewhere and put it together and connect it, and they didn't know there was no video department or technical department. The technical department that's the first thing, and then I was like. How does it look in a museum? I have no idea. The artist didn't have an idea. And then with time, started evolving. And then there's a question I always ask is, okay, we have $100,000 just for the exhibition. How do you want the piece to look? Because that defines the way we film it. No? So if you want the piece to be in an iPad, it's completely different than if you want a piece in a screen that's 9 by 6 or 16 by 9 meters. It's completely different approach. I don't own equipment. Never owned equipment, because if I own equipment in moving image equipment is expensive, so I have to sell it to the artist. I rent the equipment because that every project has a particular way of a texture, a color, everything has to do with making the project better. And I think that what is interesting about that is that you start adding up all these things, and then if you're very lucky in the way you relate with the other person and you share, you don't keep anything to yourself, and you go forward and you fight with that person for the piece, which is second rule in my collaborations, is we're going to fight. Don't take it personal. It's not with you, it's with the piece. The piece has to be better. And I'm here because I want to make the piece better, not because I want to fight with you. And if you do that and you get there, then you probably manage to get a third level, and the piece starts becoming something else that none of us thought about, thought possible.
I see relations a little bit to being a curator as well, where you have to build up trust, and you kind of have to go in blindly into these situations, and then see where they go and adapt. Also, you have to fight for certain things and have discussions about why you think that something would be better done a certain way and perhaps not like the artist would want to do it, knowing when to step back, knowing when to go in again, things like that. Of course, and also thinking visually, even though if I'm not creating the image or holding the apparatus or tool that produces it, I am thinking about how it is portrayed in the space, how the visitor will move through the space, and what that means for the piece. So in new commissions, it plays a very big role, I'm sure, and also was, as we saw from Lawrence Leck's presentation before, very much connected between the idea of cinematography within the piece itself and then the installation within the space and the viewer's pathway through this journey with this audio. So that's like a real synthesis of all these different modes of encounter, from the very personal behind the scenes encounter to the encounter then with the general public, I guess. And I like that. I hadn't thought about it like that. But I guess most collaborations of some sort always require, these moments of intense conflict. But how do you not take things personally?
Because if we actually did our work, the piece is going to be there after all of us are gone.
So you think about that?
I believe in what I do. I really clearly believe in what I do, and I think that what I do, and sometimes I believe so much in something, I think this is not good, and I think and I follow it, and then one day, sometimes they give you a surprise, and something becomes better than what you thought, and sometimes you think, oh, this is a great thing, and then it starts kind of deflates, and it deflates and disappears. It disappears literally. It's in pieces that are in a drawer, somewhere. I don't know where, and nobody asks for them. Nobody sees them, and they might be historical curiosities, but that's it. So yeah, and I mean, between 1998 and 2004, I worked with one day somebody asked me, I met in a dinner. I was in a dinner, and this video collector, which I had never met a video collector in my life. I said, well, how do you live with video? I want to know how you live with video. So he explained somehow that he had this little room, and he put this. I mean, this is before plasmas or anything like that. He had monitors. I thought, I want to do this. So for about 6 years, I worked with different galleries to help them set up video work in homes, because I wanted to know how do you live with with
so
that.
How do you live with?
Some people put them screen that comes down. Some people hide it in the bookshelf. Some people have like a television that when the people come in, they just put a video. It all depends, like. And I mean, it's completely doable. This technology is amazing. and now it's actually I mean, yeah, but you have a monitor and you just plug, you know, anything, you don't even, you can put it from your phone, and you know, you have the whole collection in your phone, and you said that. Then for 7 or 8 years, I consolidated archives of old artists, you know. So they came to me because somebody said one day, I have a box of, you know, tapes and 60 millimeter tapes and Super 8 tapes of this artist or this, and I said, well, let's just start doing it. And so we did, and I learned how it works, how to consolidate, what happens, what's the good thing, what's bad. And it was interesting because also, you know, that's what's going to happen with our work, you know. I mean, as you can see, some images here are pretty old, and they look dated, and they're dated, and you know, we have made a digital consolidation, but that's as much as you can go. And so for me, it's been a process about learning, you know. I'm curious, very curious about all these kind of different ways, and I think that makes me a better collaborator also, you know. And it's also fun going to a rich man's house and saying, where do you want to put the video? And they start discussing, and then you start saying, and then they say yes, and then no, and then you discuss with them, and then you have a drink, and then sometimes they work, and it works, and sometimes it doesn't. You know?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the private installation in the house from your end.
Yeah.
I've been in those shoes for sure. I wanted to open up to the audience because our time is already up, and there were so many other things I wanted to touch on because there's a lot of pitfalls to collaboration, but maybe that would have to be for another time. So are there any questions that the audience would like to ask Rafael? It's coming. Over here.
Could you hand up whoever wants to? Oh. I just want to, I guess, jump on the back of a question Lisa asked about what is productive or happening in the film world that can be taken into art. Recently, there were actors and writers strikes in Hollywood. A lot of the conversations was around residuals, fees that would be paid for repeat. And that's something I wonder about in the art context of usually having fees for collaborators on a project with the first showing of a work or to make the work, and then it's considered a work, and then it'll circulate. And I think it's rare that then there would be residuals, kickback of some sort beyond that. But actually, I'm working with an artist right now who does have that model. It's something that's not using smart contracts or blockchain. It's actually just an ethic of it's working in CGI, so the modelers and CGI and also sound composer for the work, everyone has an equal percentage of all fees paid, and we know in the art the fees can be very small. Screening context, but even in installation context and circulation. But it actually does have this model of pure equal share for all circulation of the work. I'm curious if that's if I don't know if you've had that structure in your work, or you're starting to see more of this.
I have many structures because I have, you have to adapt. You know, sometimes you have a budget, sometimes you don't have a budget. You know, sometimes in the middle of a dinner, somebody tells me an idea, and I think, let's just do it. Let's try it out. And we don't have money, and then along the way you find the money. Sometimes somebody with a budget that has a grant contacts me because I already got the grant. He already wrote the project, and we just have to make it. There's very different ways of saying it, but I'm very lucky. I've done this for 29 years, and I have 3 kids, and I can do it. I can live with it. You know, it's doable. You know? Rule number 4 is I keep a copy of the piece, and I can show it whenever I want. Yeah? I can't sell it, fine, but I can show it because it is my work. Yeah? So I have exhibition rights for the pieces. Different is when I wanted to make. That's why she said, like, you're not on the internet. No, because my main problem is that I can't put it in a public space. I can't. Like, if I put a website, I have to put this. And but that piece is from Francis Alice, or this is from Milton Smith, or this is from Schopenhauer, and this is from. And then you have to negotiate with each one of them, and you can't put the piece complete. And it's a public space now. The web is a public space. So I don't have a website. I don't have because I can exhibit. I can show you. I mean, I have a little hard drive here, and it has pieces that are worth quite some money. The piece is there, and I can show it, but I can't do it in a public space.
And that's in a contract. It's written down in a contract that you can show it, or is it? Do you?
Gentlemen's don't exist, but I think I would try to say it's an agreement that is not written. It's not written. It's agreed beforehand.
But is that something in the film world? Because this is where I don't know enough. Where the copyright also belongs to the DOP, for example, or how? No, I guess it belongs to the production company only. But like, where is the?
They're fighting. DOPs are fighting. I mean, it's interesting that in Lauren's conversation, he mentioned cinematography 1,000 times, And of course, if he's mentioned it, it's because the creation if you can think of all those imaginary worlds that created our understanding of the cinematic world, they were all made by cinematographers. So he still uses the same term, which was a guy behind a camera with a little thing, like telling another guy to move that light, keep it back, look at that. Like it was just humans doing things. And the interesting about what Lauren said is that yes, it has to look somehow real. That is what a good cinematographer is. He kind of disappears. I mean, if you're not doing Blade Runner, which is, of course, you have to somehow appear because it doesn't exist. But you have to disappear. Like, who knows who was the photographer of Space Odyssey 2001, Stanley Kubrick's film? It's an amazing cinematographer, But he's so good that he's there, and he created a world with him, a fascinating world that didn't exist. So he's there. He'll go to the credits. You want to know right now? Google, boop, in 1 second you know it. And an art piece, I don't know.
Are there further questions?
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, so you were talking about who cares about what the credit in a sense, but I'm wondering from like feature films, documentaries to work with artists, how has that changed your profession in what you have done? Like, it's always the same thing, but it's kind of not. So when we heard Lawrence today, it's a different form of cinematography.
Okay. One day, I was doing a conference about a film that's called Maquette en Tetlapayec, and I was asked to present it in a film festival. And after that, I kind of decided to read a text, just like this kind of text that I write, which are very for the moment, that people can relate to quite quickly. It's not an essay. I am not an intellectual of moving image. And basically, I would explain how I got to make that film that was related to the arts. It was related to Eisenstein, but it was also related to the arts. And it was made by a curator. The director was a curator who had never, ever made a film. So we made the film together, and then unfortunately he died, and so we showed the film. And after that, somebody asked me a question, and she said, well, with all this that you've learned in the art world, you should come back to the film world because you could do things differently. And at that moment, I turned and I said, I am a filmmaker. This is film. The context in which it is presented is different, but it is film. It's a continuation of a language, as well as animation and CGI. People in history, they say about film is this primitive time of animation. It's the kind of like both ways, I think. But I think that what I do is films. That's why when she asked me like, how do I present? I'm a hybrid because I feel kind of like strange and defining.
And maybe that's a very fitting thing for the 21st century, that we can go in and out of between different worlds and fields and scenes and identities and images of self in a way. I wanted to end, unless there are other questions still, because I have another question. I wanted to end actually with something, or with what you began with, which was the text. I wanted to know more about when those are written, how you keep track. Um, do they come out all at once? Is it like a daily practice, a diaristic practice? Tell us more about that.
No, I mean, I write sometimes because I want to. I don't know why I write. I
Well,
just sometimes feel that it's the easiest way.
May
to
I
put a little
be
bit of
the outside person from Lawrence's
work.
system? Um,
It's my fox, yeah.
you had said maybe, is it a form of creating a trace? In this,
I think I've only published one text once, and they've always asked for me from text, and I just keep them and I put them in a drawer. I don't really, because I think they're texts that they're belong to a context and a moment. You know, I think it's a text that I could read here, prepared it for today, for you, and if somebody reads it in another context and that doesn't, without, for example, without these images, maybe, like a Belgian with sheep in the central plaza of Mexico doesn't make sense, no? Because if you don't see the image, it doesn't make sense. So I think in those terms are a little bit kind of related to moving image always. So they are related to what you're going to see or you saw. So they don't work as texts. I think they would be voice-offs, maybe.
so they're not cinematic so much in themselves.
I don't know, ask them. I have no idea. But I do think in images. I do think in images, yeah. The French woman in the railing in a ship, yes, I do. It's just an image. No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.